Welcome back to my channel, guys. Apologies in advance for the handheld video. I thought these days were behind me, but I'm visiting, I'm at a hotel, and I didn't think to bring my tripod that I use at home. Greetings from North Carolina. This is my first stop on a series of trips that I'm heading on. I mentioned this in a previous video that I've just been kind of in a funk, and I thought, you know what, you need a change of scenery, you need to reset. And so I literally sold a ton of stocks. People always watch these videos and say, like, do you even have, like, how do you pay for all this? Do you have a job? Like, do you actually work? Yes, I work. I work remotely though. I work from home, so I can work anywhere. I've actually been working during this trip. But in terms of paying for these trips, yes, it does add up. And I ended up selling a ton of investments, stocks and stuff. And I thought, you know what? Instead of keeping this locked away, tucked away in my savings as I normally do, this is the time to travel. So this is the first stop, North Carolina. I'm going to head to a few other southern cities or towns after this, and then I'm going to go overseas and explore some new spots. So stay tuned for those videos if you like these travel videos. But let's talk about North Carolina. So I'm in the vicinity of Raleigh, North Carolina. Raleigh is the capital of North Carolina. Why am I here? A few different reasons. My brother attends college in the area. You might know that Raleigh is surrounded by a few colleges. There's the University of North Carolina campus at Chapel Hill, which is about 40 minutes from downtown Raleigh. There's Duke University, which is in Durham, North Carolina, about equidistant, I would say. Then you have Wake Forest. So interestingly, though Raleigh is the capital of North Carolina, this region really seems to be more so marked by this college campus presence. So I came here to visit him, but also to visit a new place. And I think I've talked about this before, that there's something about the South that's always sort of alluring to me. Now, yes, of course, I'm aware that the South is sort of a double-edged sword as a region in the US because, you know, there tends to be a negative sort of stereotype about the South that it's more homogenous, it's less progressive than other parts of the country, still sort of rooted in a very old-fashioned way of thinking. Of course, as I said, I think that's a double-edged sword, right? What you also find here, and I've seen it during this trip, and I've seen it experience it in other places in the South before, people are much friendlier here. People are more polite. You make eye contact when the elevator doors open and the person says hello to you, they greet you. You don't really experience that in a major city like, let's say, New York City. However, of course, I'm aware of the nuances that this politeness is agreeable, it's pleasant, but it doesn't actually mean that people are genuinely more polite. That's sort of a stereotype of the South that you hear a lot, that it's like a fake niceness. Anyway, I came here to explore, to see my brother, and of course, to figure out, you know, what the scene is like with the guys around here. Let me just start by saying this is unfortunately one of the more disappointing trips that I've had in the States, in the US. It may even be, dare I say, the most disappointing, because throughout this trip, I've been thinking about other places I was disappointed by, but that I could find sort of a redeemable characteristic. And I'm struggling to find one here. So let's get into it. As I mentioned, Raleigh is the capital of the state, yet this area is really more so known for the surrounding college campuses. And if you're not familiar with these schools, maybe you're not from the US watching this or not from this region, those three schools that I mentioned, UNC, University of North Carolina, Duke University, and Wake Forest, they're considered really top tier schools. Duke in particular, and Wake Forest, I think they're considered like top 10, top 20 schools in the nation. So of course that also attracts a certain level of attention. I ended up specifically staying in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where the University of North Carolina campus is, UNC. I was going to stay in Raleigh because in my mind it was like, I'm going to stay in the city. Like, why would I stay on your college campus? But my brother actually was the one who had the instinct of, I don't think you're going to really like Raleigh. And I thought he was just being kind of judgy. He was spot on that Chapel Hill was the best place in this surrounding area for me to stay. In terms of accessibility, walkability of this area, Chapel Hill, I mean, you step out and there's like restaurants, there's bars, but at the end of the day, it's a college town. So it's been really eerie, to be honest, to walk around, and 95% of the people around me are like 19 years old. It's been very eerie, and nothing makes you feel 30 something like walking around and seeing a bunch of humans that are right out of their teenage years. I will also mention that it's been very eerie to think I don't remember looking that young at that age. Like, they look much younger to me than what a college student looks like in my mind, which also makes me feel old. Like, is that a sign of just being much older, that these people look younger than you thought they should look? Like, they look like children to me. They look like high school students. Anyway, I digress. Now, obviously, as a 30-something-year-old who makes these videos traveling, college students are not my target demographic, right? But again, in my mind, I thought there would be some like really sexy Southern athletes walking around. I have seen maybe one. The rest of them just look like children to me. So that's like, again, abort the mission. That's not my target audience. But anyway, it's been interesting to stroll around. Interestingly, at Duke University, my brother brought me around to the different campuses just to see how how these campuses look. And Duke, the community there of students actually felt much older. And interestingly, my brother told me that it's one of the only schools, I guess, in the country where there's more grad students than undergrad students. So that instinct, that observation was accurate, that there are older students there. Anyway, I say all this to say, at the end of the day, these are college towns, right? So yes, they have nice campuses. My brother even used the word Hogwarts. He said these campuses look a bit Hogwartsy, particularly Duke University, and I agree with that. Of course, as a visitor, it's like, it's not that stimulating to visit a college campus town. One thing that is much clearer to me now that I'm older is like, yeah, these are colleges, these are universities, these are scholastic institutions, but this is all a business. Like, staying in Chapel Hill this whole time, it's very clear to me that this entire town revolves around the college. Like, all the businesses, the little, mom and pop shops, the bookstores, the restaurants, they all cater to this community of students, which, again, as a 30-something-year-old, it just makes me feel a little weird to think like, I just think back to when I was a student, and you think it's like the most important thing, and you're here to get your college degree, but the bigger picture is like, all of this is a business. Of course, I checked out the apps while here. I actually haven't spoken to anybody. The messages I get are mostly from guys who are like 19, 22, which again, if if I felt like I was talking to young men, it might be different, but I feel like they're like boys, which is, again, not my target audience. So I say all that to say I was really curious at this point to check out Raleigh, the city itself, the capital of North Carolina, thinking it's going to be very different, of course, than these college towns. Like, I want to see what the city looks like. So I went straight to downtown Raleigh because from the research that I did, downtown was sort of like the more walkable area. I also, of course, wanted to check out, like, is it gay friendly? As part of this series of gay travel videos, I wanted to know, like, are there gay establishments? Is there a gay neighborhood? Turns out Raleigh doesn't have a gay neighborhood, but there's sort of a section of downtown that has what came up as gay bars on Google Maps. But then when I actually got there, I realized they're not really gay bars. They're, gay friendly, AKA like I saw one rainbow flag in the whole neighborhood, which I'm not too surprised by because I was curious, like, okay, Raleigh is the capital, right? And capitals tend to be more liberal, progressive, more variety of people, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, we're in North Carolina, right? At the end of the day, we're in the South. We're not in the deep South, but we're in the South. And so my impression is, yeah, it would be tough to be gay here because it's not like it's totally taboo, but it's not either a place that has a thriving gay community. If anything, the college campus towns are probably more diverse in that sense and more progressive and accepting. So I continue to walk around downtown Raleigh. And have you ever walked through a city or walked into a home, let's say, or you know what, walked into, I'm sure you'll relate to this, walked into like a government building and you just feel a weird energy. It's not obvious, you know, it's not overt, but it's just sort of like you get uneasy. You feel like you don't want to stay there too long. That's how I felt in downtown Raleigh. It's not a stimulating or dynamic city by any means. And the crowd, I would say about 80% of the people I walked by were kind of zombie-ish. Like either they're homeless, they're definitely on drugs, or they just seemed sad and kind of desolate. The last time I experienced this, where I felt the same sort of eeriness, was in Portland, Oregon, where I was about a year ago, actually, at the time that I'm making this video. I remember being really disappointed in Portland and again, feeling this sort of like collective chagrin walking around the city. And it's also just not a nice city. You know, it's a bunch of like random corporate buildings lumped together, and then here and there you have, you know, a restaurant. The difference though with a place like Portland, Oregon, as soon as I actually stepped out of the city into the surrounding nature, I got it. And I was like, oh, you don't go to Portland for the city of Portland. You go to Portland, or just Oregon, the state in general, for the nature, for the waterfalls, for the hiking, for the parks. And then you kind of get it, like, oh, this is the value of this area. So there's these redeeming qualities, is my point, to these cities that otherwise you're left feeling like these downtown areas were more probably dynamic like a decade ago. You know, I'm fully aware as well that many of these cities were totally ravaged by the pandemic and just haven't been able to really recover. So, you know, I don't know what the history of Raleigh looks like in terms of that, but I was really disappointed by this city, and I was not really able to find redeeming qualities. I guess the potentially redeeming quality is these outside college towns that feel more sort of safe and you know, exuberant, but when you're a grown adult, it's like visiting a college town is not that interesting. The nature thing I mentioned though, I think probably applies here as well, because when I really think about it, when people rave about North Carolina, it's more so about the nature-oriented areas, right? The Blue Ridge Mountains are a well-known region here that people visit. People will also visit Asheville, North Carolina, for the scenery. And then of course the coastal region of North Carolina is also well known. You know, the Outer Banks, people always talk about the Outer Banks. So if you have any context, let me know in the comments. But the capital itself, the city, I'm disappointed. And as a gay person traveling, I have to say I've been very underwhelmed as well by that element of things here. I was secretly hoping to have myself like an early 2000s Mandy Moore movie moment. Maybe meet a basketball player at Duke or at UNC Chapel Hill who's in grad school and exploring, we'll say. But alas, not this trip. Stay tuned for more videos. The next stop on my trip is Nashville, Tennessee, which I've never been to. I've heard mixed things about Nashville, so I'm very curious to see how it is. Let me know in the comments your thoughts if you've been to this region, if you have more context on North Carolina, and I'll catch you guys next time.